Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. This time, we're tackling Ubisoft.
Ubisoft.
And this is but we're not just talking about, like, the games themselves, right? We're going way deeper.
Yeah.
Looking at this, like, worldwide network of studios they have.
Yeah.
How that impacts their games, how it impacts the industry, and even, like, the economies of the countries where these studios are.
That's a really interesting point.
So, to kind of kick us off.
Yeah.
Did you know, for example, there are over 4,000 Ubisoft employees in Montreal alone?
That's a lot of people.
It's a lot.
Wow.
So this one's for anyone who's kind of fascinated by, like, what really goes on behind the scenes of these massive games that we all play.
Absolutely. And what's really fascinating about Ubisoft is, you might think it's just one big headquarters somewhere.
Right.
Making all the decisions, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's this, like, network. Right.
Yeah.
Over 40 studios.
40.
In more than 30 countries.
Oh, my God.
It's a truly global operation.
That's, like, more than some countries have cities.
Right. It's huge.
That's wow.
And understanding that is key to, like, really grasping their impact, I think.
Yeah, and it's not even just about, I guess, spreading the workload, right?
Right.
You get different cultural influences woven in.
You do.
We all know, like, Montreal is known for this kind of narrative-driven experience, right? But what about other places? Like, how does that work?
Well, you can kind of think of it as like a global talent pool, right?
Okay.
Each studio brings something different, something unique to the table.
Give me an example, yeah.
So you take Ubisoft Singapore.
Okay.
They have this, like, expertise in naval combat, right?
Oh, interesting. Okay.
You see it really clearly in Assassin's Creed IV, Black Flag.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And they're actually the ones leading the charge.
Okay.
On their upcoming pirate game, Skull and Bones.
Oh, cool.
Or you look at Ubisoft Toronto.
Okay.
They're all about massive, technically ambitious projects.
Yeah.
Like Far Cry 6, pushing the boundaries.
That was a big one.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, let's not forget, Ubisoft Shanghai.
Okay. Yeah.
Really key for expanding into the Asian markets.
Interesting.
Particularly in the mobile gaming scene, which is huge over there.
So it's not just like Ubisoft makes a game.
Like
it's like this whole web of very specialized teams working together.
It's this interconnected network.
But that must be insanely complex to coordinate.
Oh, absolutely.
These people aren't all, like, down the hall from each other.
Right. Imagine just the logistics.
Yeah.
Time zones alone.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Must be a nightmare for them.
That's a huge one. I wouldn't have even thought of that.
Right. And then you've got to think about, how do you ensure quality is consistent?
Oh.
When you've got all these different teams, different levels of experience.
Right. Yeah.
And then you've got to maintain that cohesive creative vision, right?
It's a big vision.
You've got people from all these different backgrounds, all these different cultures contributing to the same game.
So that makes total sense. Like, you've got all these incredible studios, each with their own strengths, but then comes the challenge of blending it all together.
Exactly.
It's like almost like a symphony orchestra, but each section is on a different continent.
I love that analogy. That's a great way to put it.
Right. Like, how do you even begin to?
Yeah, how do you make that work?
Like, wrangle that?
Well, one way they do this is through what's called a decentralized development model.
Okay. Interesting.
It's a bit different from how games are traditionally made, where one studio handles everything.
Yeah, I would assume so.
But with this model, multiple studios are actually contributing to different aspects of a single game.
Oh, wow.
You can kind of think of it like a film production.
Yeah.
You've got experts in special effects and set design, in costumes,
all
working together on that final product.
So instead of one studio trying to be like a jack of all trades, they're bringing in the best specialists from around the world.
Exactly.
That sounds incredibly efficient.
It can be.
But also potentially chaotic.
Yes. It definitely has its challenges.
How do you prevent it from becoming like a Frankenstein's monster of a game?
Well, it all comes down to having that clear vision from the start.
Okay.
And maintaining strong communication throughout the entire process.
Okay.
For a game like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, for example.
Yeah, that was huge.
Which had, get this, over 15 studios involved.
Oh my gosh.
That communication was absolutely crucial.
I bet.
They were using advanced project management tools, regular video conferencing, and even having team members actually travel to the different studios.
Oh, wow.
To make sure that everyone was on the same page.
That's pretty intense.
It's a big undertaking.
So they've had to become like masters of remote collaboration, basically.
Yes, absolutely, especially with teams spread all over the globe.
Yeah.
But even with the best communication, even if everything is like crystal clear, isn't there still that risk of cultural clashes?
Yes, of course.
Right. What works in one culture might not translate well in another.
For sure.
How do they navigate that tricky terrain?
Yeah, how do you do that?
So this is where things get really interesting because Ubisoft has recognized the importance of incorporating regional influences into their games.
Yeah.
So take, for example, Assassin's Creed Chronicles. China.
Okay.
The game's art style, the narrative,
yeah,
even some of the gameplay mechanics
wow,
were specifically designed to resonate with Chinese audiences.
Oh, interesting.
Showcasing their commitment to catering to those specific markets.
So it's like they're not just creating games, they're creating cultural experiences.
In a way, yes.
But with such a focus on this, like, global appeal, right? Isn't there a risk of losing that kind of unique cultural flavor?
There is, and that's a really valid concern.
Yeah.
It's a constant balancing act for them. On one hand, they want to create games that appeal to a wide audience.
Of course, yeah.
But on the other hand, they don't want to homogenize everything.
Right, lose that, yeah.
You lose that sense of cultural identity.
Okay.
It's a tightrope walk, really.
Yeah. And they've had both successes and missteps along the way.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes me think about something else, too, like the economic impact of this whole thing. It's not just about the creative side, right?
Right.
These studios are creating jobs.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're boosting local economies.
Yeah.
Maybe even like changing the landscape of the gaming industry
yeah.
in those regions.
Yeah.
You know, you mentioned those 4,000 employees in Montreal.
Yeah.
That's just one city.
Just one city. Imagine that multiplied across 30-plus countries.
Gotta be, yeah.
The ripple effect is huge.
Huge impact.
It's a huge boost for local economies.
Yeah.
And it's not just about the jobs themselves.
What else?
They also invest heavily in education.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Partnering with universities, training programs to nurture the next generation of game developers.
So they're not just extracting talent, they're cultivating it.
Exactly.
That's actually really pretty significant.
It is.
But I mean, this is all great, but I imagine managing a workforce that is so globally dispersed comes with its own set of challenges.
Absolutely.
I mean, we talked about communication, cultural differences, but what about things like fair labor practices?
That's a big one.
Ensuring ethical treatment of employees across all these different regions.
That is a critical aspect of any global operation.
Yeah.
You need to ensure that people are treated fairly, ethically,
right,
regardless of where they are located.
Yeah.
That's paramount.
Yeah.
Ubisoft has faced criticism in the past regarding this working conditions in some of its studios.
Right.
It's an ongoing challenge. It's something that requires constant vigilance,
a
commitment to transparency, accountability.
Yeah, that's a big one. It's not easy.
It sounds like operating on this global scale
It's complex.
isn't just about navigating creative and logistical challenges.
Yes. It's about navigating ethical ones as well.
Right, and those are sometimes arguably tougher to
Those are the toughest ones.
tackle, I would say.
Absolutely.
This is all so fascinating.
It is.
I feel like we're just scratching the surface
We are.
of this sprawling Ubisoft empire.
It's huge.
Right. It's not just about the games, it's about this global network.
Yeah.
The economic impact, the ethical considerations
That's a lot.
of operating on such a massive scale.
Yeah. It's a lot to unpack.
And we've only just begun.
Yeah.
Luckily, we have more time to kind of delve deeper into this.
We do.
This fascinating world of Ubisoft.
Looking forward to it.
But for now, let's take a quick break.
Okay.
And come back with a fresh perspective on, like, Ubisoft's impact on the games themselves.
Sounds good. All right, so we're back and ready to like really dive deeper into how this global network actually impacts the games themselves.
Okay.
Does having all of these studios around the world mean we get more diverse stories and settings and characters?
It definitely has the potential to broaden their creative horizons, right?
Yeah.
Like, imagine a Far Cry game set in the Himalayas,
Okay.
developed by a team in India who can bring their own, like, cultural perspective,
Right.
lived experiences to the project.
That's what I'm talking about, like experiencing worlds and stories that we haven't seen before,
Exactly.
told from perspectives that feel really authentic.
Yeah.
But let's flip the coin for a second.
Okay.
Some critics argue that this global model can actually lead to a watering down of cultural elements, like a sort of homogenization to appeal to the masses.
Yeah.
How does Ubisoft respond to that?
It's a valid concern, and it's one that they're definitely aware of.
Okay.
It's a constant balancing act, right?
Oh, yeah.
Appealing to a broad audience while also preserving the unique cultural identity of each region.
So how do they strike that balance?
Well, one way they try to do that is by giving studios creative freedom within the framework of a franchise.
Okay.
So, for example, the Assassin's Creed series
Yeah.
has explored various historical periods and cultures,
Right.
allowing studios to draw upon regional expertise,
Okay.
inject their own flavor into the gameplay, the narrative.
So it's like they're providing the canvas, but letting each studio choose their own colors and brushstrokes.
I like that. That's a good way to put it.
But how do they actually measure success?
That's a good question.
Is it just about sales figures? Or are there other things that they're looking at?
Sales are definitely important, obviously,
Right.
but they're not the only metric.
Okay.
Ubisoft pays very close attention to player feedback,
Okay.
critical reception,
Mm.
how well a game performs in specific regions.
So they really want to make sure that, all those millions of players out there are having a positive experience regardless of where they're coming from.
Exactly. It shows a commitment to understanding their global audience.
Yeah.
Making sure that their games are both commercially successful and culturally relevant.
It's like they're playing like a multi-dimensional chess game.
Kind of, yeah.
Balancing creative vision, cultural sensitivity, market demands.
It's a lot to juggle.
It is.
But they're doing a pretty good job of it, I think.
Yeah, yeah. We talked earlier about the possibility of Ubisoft being acquired by a larger company.
Right.
Now that we've kind of seen how this intricate network operates, what implications might an acquisition have?
It's hard to say for sure.
Yeah.
It really depends on the acquiring company and their intentions.
Okay, so let's play that what-if game for a second.
Okay.
Let's say, hypothetically, Microsoft, with their Xbox Game Pass, acquired Ubisoft.
Okay.
What might that mean for gamers?
Well, on the plus side, it could mean wider access to Ubisoft's games through Game Pass.
Yeah.
So millions more players could potentially experience those games. Maybe be exposed to games that they might not have even considered before.
Okay, so that sounds like a win for accessibility.
Yeah, I think so.
But what's the catch? There's got to be a catch, right?
Well, the potential downside is exclusivity.
Okay.
What happens to PlayStation players?
Yeah.
PC players?
So they just,
Are they left out in the cold?
So it's access versus restriction.
Right.
And then there's also that question of creative control.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Does Ubisoft maintain the freedom to kind of develop the games that they want to make? Or are they being pressured to churn out sequels and microtransaction-heavy titles that prioritize profit over, artistic vision?
It's a valid concern, for sure.
Yeah.
Any acquisition raises those questions, right?
Yeah.
How might the company's culture be affected?
Right.
Their creative direction. Gamers are definitely going to want to see how those dynamics play out.
So it sounds like we're venturing into uncharted territory, full of exciting possibilities, but also potential pitfalls.
Exactly.
The future of Ubisoft and maybe even the gaming industry as a whole is kind of hanging in the balance.
It's an interesting time to be a gamer, that's for sure.
It is. This deep dive has really highlighted just how complex it is to operate on this global scale.
It's not easy.
It's not just about making games. It's about navigating cultural sensitivities, managing this diverse workforce, staying ahead of this ever-changing market.
That's a lot to keep track of.
It is. It feels like we've been peeling back layers of an onion.
It does, yeah.
Every discovery reveals another layer beneath. But before we get lost in those layers, let's zoom out for a second.
Okay.
Consider what Ubisoft's journey tells us about the bigger picture of gaming's future.
That's a great point. It's all connected in a way.
Yeah.
That's a great segue into our final thoughts, where we can really reflect on how this global approach might shape the gaming landscape for years to come.
Okay, so we've seen how this whole global empire works, the good, the bad.
Yeah.
But what does it all mean for gaming as a whole?
Yeah, that's the big question.
Is Ubisoft kind of like a glimpse into the future of how games are made?
Well, what's fascinating to me is that Ubisoft is almost like a miniature version of the entire industry.
Interesting. Okay.
Gaming itself is becoming more and more global.
Right. Yeah.
You've got studios popping up everywhere.
Yeah, all over the place.
Players connecting from every corner of the world.
It's true.
So in a way, Ubisoft is kind of a pioneer, right?
Okay.
Forging the path for this interconnected, diverse gaming world.
That's pretty exciting.
It is exciting.
But also incredibly complex.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, how do you manage a global network of developers,
Right.
cater to all these different cultures, and still make games that are both commercially successful and artistically great?
It's a tough challenge.
Yeah.
It all boils down to communication, I think.
Okay.
We've talked about the need for clear communication between studios
Right.
across time zones,
Oh, yeah.
between cultures even.
Yeah.
It's like they're building bridges,
Yeah.
not just with their games, but with how they operate as a company.
And it's not just about, like, developers talking to each other.
No, it's about listening to players from all over the world.
Taking that feedback to heart.
Absolutely.
That's gotta be tough, though, trying to make everyone feel heard and represented.
It is. It's a huge challenge.
Yeah.
It's a two-way street, right?
Yeah.
Developers need to be open to that feedback.
Yeah.
And players need to understand the challenges of creating games for such a diverse audience.
Absolutely.
It's a conversation.
Right.
And that open dialogue, I think, is going to
Yeah.
be key for the future of gaming.
So as the industry becomes, like, more globalized, we're gonna see more games that are drawing inspiration from all over the world.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, imagine a game that seamlessly blends Japanese anime with Bollywood storytelling
Wow. Yeah.
and, like, European folklore, you know?
Yeah, the possibilities are endless.
The possibilities are mind-blowing.
It's exciting.
It is, but I also wonder about the potential downsides.
Yeah, what are those?
As those lines between cultures kind of blur.
Yeah.
Do we risk losing that unique flavor that makes games from different regions so special?
It's a valid concern.
Yeah.
It's something that developers need to be mindful of
Right.
as they strive to appeal to that global audience.
Mm-hmm.
It's a delicate balance,
Yeah.
finding that common ground
Yeah.
while still celebrating what makes each culture unique.
So it's not just about making games that everyone can enjoy.
Right.
It's about making games that everyone can learn from.
Exactly.
Games that broaden our understanding of the world and each other.
That's what makes gaming so powerful. It has this incredible ability to connect people,
Yeah.
break down barriers,
Mm-hmm.
help us understand each other better.
Well, we've reached the end
Of our,
deep dive into Ubisoft.
it's been a journey.
It has. We've seen how their global empire operates,
We have
the challenges, the opportunities they face, and what it all might mean for the future of gaming.
Yeah.
One thing's for sure, the gaming world is changing rapidly,
Yeah.
and companies like Ubisoft, with their global reach, willingness to embrace new ideas,
Yeah.
are at the forefront of that change.
Absolutely.
And as players, we have a role to play too.
We do.
By being open to new experiences,
Yeah.
engaging in respectful dialogue,
Uh-huh.
supporting developers who are pushing boundaries,
Right.
we can help shape a future where games are more than just entertainment.
That's a great point.
They can be a force for good in the world.
Absolutely.
Well said.
I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
Okay.
Next time you play a game, think about the people who created it, the cultures they represent,
Yeah.
the stories they're trying to tell.
Yeah.
You might be surprised by what you discover.
That's a great note to end on.
Thanks.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep playing, and keep your minds open to the endless possibilities of